The scent of lilies hung thick in the air, clinging to every breath like a ghost. Mourners whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible over the somber hum of organ music echoing through the funeral home. At the center of the room, the white coffin sat under dim lighting, surrounded by flickering candles and tear-streaked faces. Karen Harper stood frozen, her eyes locked on her daughter's still face. Emily had always brought light into dark rooms. Now the silence she left behind was unbearable. A figure approached quietly, Ryan Blake. He kept his head low, avoiding eye contact, his hands trembling slightly. Karen watched him with a mixture of grief and suspicion. He leaned close, whispering something only she could hear. Karen didn't blink. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. Instead, she slowly turned to him, her face blank, but her eyes sharp with something else entirely. Something colder. Without a word, she stepped away from her daughter's casket and exited the room, leaving stunned silence behind her. No one knew what he had said, but Karen did. And whatever it was, it changed everything. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell, because here we uncover the stories others are too afraid to tell. Join thousands who believe the truth must be heard. Don't miss what comes next. It's closer and darker than you think. Emily Harper was 17, but she had the soul of someone twice her age. She wasn't the loudest, the flashiest, or the most popular, but when Emily walked into a room, people noticed. Maybe it was the way she listened so intently when others spoke, or the way she laughed, like she meant it. Her dream was to become a forensic scientist. A passion sparked when she watched old crime documentaries with her mom, Karen. She was the kind of daughter every mother prayed for, smart, gentle, reliable. She worked weekends at a local bookstore and volunteered at the animal shelter after school. Her bedroom walls were covered with posters of planets and anatomy charts, taped right beside goofy Polaroids of her and her best friend, Zoe Mitchell. Karen, a single mom and a nurse at the local hospital, had raised Emily on her own since she was 5. Their bond was unshakable. Part mother-daughter, part best friends. They had nightly rituals, making hot chocolate, binge-watching mystery series, and exchanging long talks that often turned into teary hugs. But in the weeks leading up to Emily's death, Karen noticed subtle changes. Emily started locking her bedroom door, a habit she'd never had. She jumped at unexpected noises. Her phone buzzed constantly, and whenever Karen asked who it was, Emily would smile but never answer. And then there was Ryan. He'd been Emily's boyfriend for nearly a year. Polite, charming. The kind of young man who knew how to win a mother's approval, but Karen had always felt something off, something behind his too-perfect smile. Emily never spoke badly of him, but her eyes did. Lately, they looked tired, like they were hiding something. One evening, Karen found Emily crying in the backyard. She said it was nothing, just stress about exams. Karen held her, but deep down, she knew it was more, much more. And then one morning, Emily left for school and never came back. No one knew it yet, but the final days of her life were filled with fear, and someone knew exactly why. For most of her life, Emily Harper had known exactly what she wanted. She dreamed of leaving her small town behind and studying forensic science at UCLA. She used to tell her mom, "I want to give the dead a voice." There was something powerful in that statement, a mix of ambition, justice, and empathy. She believed every story deserved to be told, even the ones buried beneath silence. Her plan was clear: finish high school with honors, earn a scholarship, and move to California by the end of summer. She'd already started applying to programs, her essays handwritten with precision and heart. She was glowing with purpose. Her room was cluttered with textbooks, flashcards, and crime scene manuals. She wasn't just chasing a dream, she was building it, brick by brick. But then, cracks began to form. It started subtly. A strange tension when Ryan was around. Emily would laugh, but there was no light in her eyes. She'd hold his hand, but look over her shoulder, like someone might be watching. Karen noticed how she stopped bringing him around as often, and when she did, Emily hovered near him nervously, like she was guarding against his mood. Ryan Blake had always come off as the ideal boyfriend. Respectful, affectionate, always offering to help with groceries or complimenting Karen's cooking. But behind closed doors, he was different, possessive, demanding. He'd text Emily non-stop, asking where she was, who she was with, when she'd be home. If she didn't reply fast enough, he'd flood her inbox with accusations. At first, Emily tried to hide it. She deleted messages, smiled through her anxiety, and brushed off concern with well-rehearsed lines like, "He's just protective," or "It's just how he loves me." Zoe, Emily's best friend, wasn't convinced. She confronted her once during lunch, after Emily showed up with a faint bruise near her collarbone. Emily claimed she'd bumped into a cabinet, but Zoe saw through it. They argued. Zoe begged her to leave him, but Emily just cried and promised she had everything under control. Karen, too, was getting suspicious. One night, while Emily was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message lit up the screen. "If I see you with him again, I swear to God." That was all Karen saw before Emily snatched the phone away and locked herself in her room. That same week, Emily asked her mom a question that seemed harmless, until it wasn't. "Do you think people can change if they really want to?" she asked, stirring cocoa absent-mindedly. Karen paused, watching her daughter. "I think some people pretend they want to change, but the ones who really do, they don't need to ask. They just change." Emily didn't reply. She just nodded, eyes locked on something distant, as if the answer confirmed a fear she wasn't ready to face. Then came the nightmares. Emily started waking up in the middle of the night, screaming. Karen would rush to her room to find her drenched in sweat, shaking. Emily claimed they were just dreams about school stress, but Karen wasn't convinced. Sometimes she'd hear her daughter muttering in her sleep, names, apologies, pleading whispers. Still, Emily kept going. She smiled for photos, went to work, helped neighbors, but it was a mask, and Karen knew it. A mother always knows. One rainy afternoon, Emily came home early. She was pale, her hands trembling. She said nothing, just crawled into bed and pulled the blanket over her head. Karen sat beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "Whatever it is," she whispered, "you can tell me." Emily didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears. The next morning, Karen found a note tucked inside Emily's journal. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just a single line scribbled in hurried handwriting. "If something happens to me, it's not an accident." Karen's blood ran cold. She tried confronting Emily, but the girl just hugged her tightly and said, "I love you, Mom, no matter what." That night would be the last time Karen saw her daughter alive. The fear had been there all along, and someone, maybe even Emily herself, knew exactly how this story would end. It was a Wednesday, the kind of overcast morning where everything feels just a little off. Emily Harper left the house at 7:32 a.m., wearing her usual hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder. She kissed her mother on the cheek and said, "Don't forget to feed Cooper," referring to their aging golden retriever. Her voice was calm, too calm. Karen would remember that later. That was the last time she saw her daughter alive. Emily never made it to school. By noon, the school had called. Karen checked her phone, a growing unease bubbling in her stomach. When she called Emily's number, it went straight to voicemail. That had never happened before. Emily always answered, always. Karen tried to stay calm. Maybe her daughter had skipped class, lost track of time, anything but what her gut was telling her. By 4 p.m., she drove to the bookstore where Emily worked weekends. They hadn't seen her. Zoe hadn't heard from her either. And Ryan? Ryan claimed he hadn't spoken to her all day, though his eyes twitched when he said it. At 6:17 p.m., Karen filed a missing person report. The officers were polite but unconvinced. "Teens run away all the time," one had said with a sigh. "She'll probably be back in a day or two." Karen wanted to scream. That night, the rain poured relentlessly. Karen sat in Emily's room, clinging to her daughter's pillow. The scent still lingered, lavender shampoo, a trace of cinnamon gum. She scrolled through old photos, rereading texts, replaying every moment that could have meant something. By morning, Emily was still gone. On Thursday afternoon, a call came in. A jogger had found something in the woods just outside town. It was Emily. She was face down, half buried beneath leaves and branches, her hoodie soaked through, one shoe missing. Her phone was nowhere to be found. The medical examiner would later confirm she'd been dead for at least 24 hours. The town held its breath. Emily Harper wasn't just missing anymore. She was gone. The autopsy revealed bruises around her neck, ligature marks. Her fingernails were broken. She'd fought back. Dirt under her nails, fibers in her hoodie that didn't match her clothing. But no DNA match, no fingerprints, just silence. Zoe was inconsolable. She told detectives Emily had confided in her days before, that she was scared, that she was trying to leave Ryan but didn't know how. She feared he'd do something final, as she had put it. Detective Samantha Torres took over the case. She was methodical, blunt, and completely unmoved by small-town politics. She started by interviewing everyone, friends, co-workers, teachers. Ryan was brought in on Friday. He didn't cry. He didn't ask questions. He said, "That's terrible," and stared at the wall for the rest of the interview. No one had seen Emily after she left her house. No one except, maybe, Mr. Doyle. The old veteran who lived 2 doors down said he saw a dark sedan idling in front of the Harper residence that morning. He didn't see the driver, but he remembered the license plate had an R and a 7. Ryan drove a black Mazda. His plate number ended in R7F. Still, it wasn't enough. Without direct evidence, there was no arrest. No charges, just grief. Emily's funeral was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. The town showed up in full force. Flowers overflowed every corner. Her framed photo stood near the altar, a shy smile frozen in time. Karen stood at the front of the room, numb. She hadn't slept in 3 days. She hadn't eaten in 2. She just stood there watching the door, as if Emily might still walk in. And then Ryan did. He wore black, a neatly pressed suit, hair combed, face clean-shaven, but he looked pale, shaken. He walked past the rows of mourners, past Zoe, past the closed casket, and then, without warning, he stopped in front of Karen. They stood face to face. He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to. She made me so mad." Karen didn't move, not even a blink. He stepped back and just like that walked away, disappearing into the crowd. No one else heard it, but Karen had. The boy who claimed to love her daughter had just confessed to her murder. Right there, at the funeral. But instead of screaming, instead of collapsing or calling the police, Karen turned and walked out of the room. Detective Samantha Torres had seen her share of confessions, but never one whispered at a funeral, delivered without fear or remorse. When Karen Harper walked into the precinct the next morning, her face pale but composed, and told Samantha what Ryan had said, the detective took it seriously. But legally, it wasn't a confession. It was a whisper, unrecorded, unwitnessed. Still, Torres knew there was more to this, and now she had reason to dig deeper. She started with Ryan's phone records. What she found was troubling. On the day of Emily's murder, Ryan's phone was off for nearly 6 hours. His alibi had been that he was at home playing video games. But there were no messages, no calls, and not a single app opened during that time. That wasn't proof, but it was a crack. Karen, meanwhile, wasn't waiting. She'd begun digging through Emily's laptop, her notebooks, anything that might help. That's when she found the hidden folder on Emily's hard drive. Screenshots of texts from Ryan, some of them threatening, others manipulative, begging her not to leave him. There was one in particular, dated 2 days before Emily's death. "If I can't have you, no one will." Torres added it to the case file, but defense attorneys were slippery, and she knew what they'd say. Teenage drama, words spoken in emotion, so she pressed harder. She interviewed Zoe again, who admitted Emily had tried to break things off with Ryan twice, but every time he'd shown up crying, sometimes with gifts, sometimes with threats. Once, Emily even said she thought he was following her home. Then there was Mr. Doyle, the neighbor. Torres took his statement and ran the partial license plate. The black Mazda Ryan owned was a match. Surveillance footage from a gas station a mile from the Harper home showed him driving that same morning at 7:41 a.m., just minutes after Emily had left for school. When Torres brought him in for questioning again, Ryan's answers started to change. This time, he said he'd driven around to clear his head. He couldn't say where, just around. Still not enough. Karen, furious and desperate, made a choice. She confronted Ryan herself, this time at his job. She wore a wire, provided by Torres. She walked in calm, controlled. "You said something at the funeral," she said, "and I need to understand." Ryan laughed nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about." But the wire caught a crucial slip. "You're twisting my words," he snapped. "I didn't say I killed her. I said I didn't mean to hurt her." Not a confession, but closer. Then came the first break. Forensics came back on Emily's hoodie, fibers that didn't match her clothes, but did match the interior fabric of Ryan's car seats. A warrant was issued. Torres searched Ryan's car and found a small gold earring wedged between the seat and the console. Karen confirmed it had been Emily's. A birthday gift. She'd worn it the morning she disappeared, but the case wasn't about to unfold neatly, because the next day a new witness came forward, a girl named Lila Jensen, a classmate of Emily's. She claimed she'd seen Emily arguing with someone 2 nights before the murder, but she wasn't sure it was Ryan. It looked like him, but taller maybe, and he had a cap on. It introduced doubt, and then came the anonymous tip, a voicemail left at the precinct. "You're looking at the wrong guy. Emily had secrets. Ask her friend. Not the loud one, the other one." The call was untraceable. Torres was back at square one. She interviewed more students, dug into Emily's online presence, found a second social media account she hadn't told her mother about, private, under a pseudonym. It showed messages between Emily and a boy named Lance, someone older, from another town. Had Emily been seeing someone else? Torres tracked him down. Lance Matthews, 22, worked at a car repair shop in a neighboring county. He admitted they had talked online, met once in person, but claimed it never went further. "I liked her," he said, "but she told me she had a boyfriend, a crazy one. She said she was scared he'd find out." Torres cross-referenced his alibi. It checked out. But what didn't check out was Ryan's behavior. Under surveillance, he was seen deleting files from his laptop. He purchased a burner phone. He even drove to a wooded area outside town and stayed there for hours, pacing, agitated. Torres knew she had enough to build pressure, but maybe not to arrest. That's when Karen took matters further. She leaked one of Ryan's threatening texts to a true crime blogger, someone with over 2 million followers. The post went viral in hours. The town exploded with outrage. People began protesting outside Ryan's workplace. He was suspended, harassed, watched, and then he snapped. 2 days later, he walked into the precinct, hands shaking. "I want to talk," he said. But what he told them? It wasn't what anyone expected. If this story is touching something deep inside you, if you've ever known someone like Emily, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Sometimes, speaking up can be the first step towards saving someone else's life. Ryan Blake sat in the small interrogation room, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on his pale face. Detective Samantha Torres leaned forward slowly, her eyes locked onto his. "I want to talk," he had said. But what came next wasn't the confession she was expecting. "I didn't kill Emily," Ryan began. "Not the way you think." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Explain." He exhaled sharply. "I went to see her that morning. Yeah, I waited outside her house. I just wanted to talk. I didn't plan. What happened?" Torres remained silent, letting the weight of the moment sit on his shoulders. "We argued. She told me she was done. For real this time. Said she didn't love me, and she never did. I grabbed her arm, He stopped himself, trembling. She pulled away, fell, hit her head. It wasn't supposed to. God, I didn't mean to. Torres narrowed her gaze. So you left her there in the woods? Ryan shook his head. No. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I put her in the car, drove around for hours. I thought maybe she wasn't dead, but she didn't move. So I left her. I left her and ran. It sounded rehearsed, half true, convenient. But then, just as Torres began to challenge his story, a knock came at the door. Another officer entered, whispering something urgently into her ear. Torres stood up immediately and left the room. What had just come in changed everything. Karen Harper had returned to Emily's room that morning. While sorting through a box of her daughter's school projects, she found something taped to the underside of a desk drawer, a flash drive. The label read, "If I disappear." Torres plugged it in at the precinct. On it were recordings, secret audio Emily had made, conversations between her and Ryan. The final one was dated 3 days before her death. In it, Ryan is heard yelling. His voice is slurred, panicked. "You think you can just leave me after everything I did for you? You're not going anywhere, Emily, not without me." Her voice is shaky but firm. "This isn't love, Ryan. This is control. And I'm done." There was a loud thump, a muffled scream, and then silence. That was the moment everything changed. Torres returned to the interrogation room and played the audio aloud. Ryan's face collapsed. Whatever composure he had was gone. He slumped forward, sobbing into his hands. "I didn't mean to," he whispered again. But this time, no one believed him. The DA moved forward with charges: second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. The town was stunned. But the shock didn't stop there. Because when police executed another warrant, this time for Ryan's laptop, they found a hidden folder encrypted with a password. Their tech team broke it. Inside were dozens of videos, not just of Emily, but of other girls. Conversations, recordings from his car, even footage from what appeared to be a hidden camera in a room that wasn't his. Torres froze. Who were these girls? Over the next week, 3 young women came forward. All had dated Ryan. All claimed he had stalked them, threatened them. Some had filed restraining orders that mysteriously went nowhere. Emily had tried to warn them, but no one had listened. Karen Harper was called in to identify some of the photos. With trembling hands, she pointed out one girl Emily had mentioned before. "That's Maria," she said. "They used to work together. Emily said she quit suddenly and never came back." Maria was located. She was alive, but terrified. She confirmed that Ryan had followed her home one night. When she threatened to report him, he sent her a photo of her younger brother walking to school. She left town the next day. The truth was unbearable. Emily wasn't just a victim of a tragic accident or a failed relationship. She was a warning, one that could have saved others if only the right people had listened in time. When Ryan appeared in court for the first time, the crowd outside the courthouse was massive. Signs, candles, chants for justice. Karen sat in the front row, eyes forward, jaw clenched. She didn't flinch when he was brought in, didn't look away when the charges were read. When asked if she wanted to speak, she stood. "My daughter told you everything," she said. In her messages, in her voice, in her silence. She tried to live. You didn't let her. But now she'll never be ignored again. The courtroom was silent. Ryan was denied bail. But for Karen, no verdict would bring peace. Not yet. The trial took months. Every detail of Emily Harper's final weeks was dissected, scrutinized, laid bare for the world to see. The defense tried to paint Ryan as a troubled young man who lost control. They spoke of pressure, of heartbreak, of youth. But nothing they said could erase the recordings, the fibers, the witnesses, the patterns. The jury didn't deliberate for long. Ryan Blake was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 48 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in quiet gasps, and a few people even clapped, quickly silenced by the judge. But Karen Harper didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply nodded. Justice had been served, but justice, Karen quickly learned, is not the same as peace. The days that followed the sentencing were quiet, too quiet. Emily's room remained untouched. Her textbook still lay open, her favorite hoodie still draped over the chair. Karen would sit there sometimes, holding her daughter's journal, whispering stories as if Emily could still hear. In town, Emily's case sparked something deeper. Girls began speaking out about abusive exes, about threats they'd been told to ignore, about fear disguised as affection. The police department implemented new training protocols. A local advocacy group named Voice for Emily was founded to provide legal and emotional support for teens in controlling or abusive relationships. Karen became its reluctant face. She never wanted the spotlight, but she knew the weight of silence. She attended school board meetings, spoke at rallies, told Emily's story on national television. She didn't glamorize it. She told the truth. The ugly, unbearable, necessary truth. One day, months after the verdict, Zoe showed up at Karen's door with a box. "It's from Emily's locker," she said, her voice tight. They finally cleared it out. Inside were notebooks, a half-eaten granola bar, a worn-out photo of Karen and Emily laughing in the backyard. And at the very bottom, a letter, folded and sealed. Karen opened it slowly. "Mom," it began, "if you ever find this and I'm not there, just know I tried. I tried to be brave. I tried to leave. I didn't want to die afraid. I love you, always. Emily." Karen pressed the letter to her heart, finally allowing herself to sob. Not for justice, not for closure, but for the little girl who once crawled into her bed during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't let go." "I never did," she whispered back. "And I never will." What would you have done if it were your daughter? If someone looked you in the eyes at her funeral and whispered a confession, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have done exactly what Karen Harper did? This story isn't just about justice. It's about listening to the voices we often ignore. The quiet cries, the subtle signs, the things we convince ourselves aren't that serious until it's too late. Emily tried to speak, in her words, in her fear, in her silence, and now her story can speak for others. If this case moved you, we ask just one thing: share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, a friend, a parent, a daughter. You never know who's living this same nightmare behind closed doors. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe was the turning point? Could more have been done? And what would you have done if you were in Karen's place? Subscribe to this channel for more true stories that must be heard, and turn on notifications, because the next story we tell might be closer than you think. Your voice matters. Let's use it.